A woman sat in my office last Thursday and said, "I just need to fix myself first." She had a list, an actual list on her phone, of things she needed to become before she let herself believe she deserved good things. Lose the weight, get the promotion, stop being so much, stop being too little. She read it to me like a sentence she'd been handed at birth, like it was simply true, the way gravity is true. I sat there and felt something old in my chest, because I have had that list. I have rewritten that list at every age I've ever been. Welcome to Breathe and Begin. I'm Sarah, psychologist, single mom, a recovering physicist who once thought the universe ran on equations and discovered the hard way that it runs on something messier. If you've got a list like hers tucked somewhere in your phone or your head or that drawer you don't open, stick around.
I want to talk about it. And if any of this finds you today, tell me in the comments. I read every one. Subscribe if you want to keep doing this together, because I think this is a conversation worth having more than once. Let me tell you about enough. Here's the thing about that list my client carries. It's never finished. You hit one item, cross it off, and somehow two more appear underneath it, like weeds. I used to think this was a discipline problem. Like if I just worked harder at the list, I'd eventually finish it and arrive somewhere solid. Get there. Be done.
But the list isn't a staircase, it's a treadmill, and the cruel design of it is that it convinces you the treadmill is a staircase, so you keep climbing and you keep not arriving, and you think the failure to arrive is evidence you need to climb harder. Psychologically, this is sometimes called conditional self-worth, the belief that your value is a thing you earn through performance, rather than a thing you simply have by virtue of being a person. And it's exhausting in a very specific way. It's not the exhaustion of hard work. It's the exhaustion of running and never being allowed to stop and rest, because resting feels like proof you were never good enough to deserve the rest in the first place. So let me say the thing plainly, right at the start, so it's sitting here for the rest of this conversation. You do not have to finish the list to be allowed to exist comfortably in your own life.
I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like a poster in a dentist's waiting room. Stay with me anyway. For 12 years, I was married to a man who saw my history, my grief, my mess, the parts of me that didn't sit in straight lines, as instability to be managed, not loved, managed. And here's the part that took me years of actual therapy to see clearly. I picked him for that. Not consciously, but some part of me believed that a man who managed me, who kept me organized and contained and presentable, was the most love I could reasonably expect. I didn't think I was enough as I actually was, grieving, sharp-edged, still half a physicist who cried at the Andromeda Galaxy. So I found someone who'd love a tidier, edited version of me instead, and I called that safety. It wasn't safety. It was a slow erasure I agreed to.
I'm not telling you this so you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because I think a lot of us do some version of this. We shrink the parts of ourselves we've decided are too much or not enough, and we hand someone, a partner, a boss, a parent, a mirror, the job of deciding whether the smaller, edited version is acceptable. And then we live inside their verdict like it's the truth. It isn't the truth. It's just a verdict. Verdicts can be wrong. Let's get something out of the way, because I think the phrase, "you are enough," gets thrown around so much it's started to sound like a bumper sticker, and bumper stickers don't fix anything.
Enough doesn't mean finished. It doesn't mean perfect or healed or that you've got it all figured out. It doesn't mean you stop growing or trying or wanting more for your life. What it actually means, and this is the version I'd want you to take with you, is that your right to be treated with care, your right to rest, your right to take up space in a room, is not something you have to qualify for. It's not a prize at the end of self-improvement. It's the ground you were already standing on the whole time, even when you couldn't feel it under your feet. So enough doesn't mean done. It means undeniable. Right now, as you are, mid-mess, mid-becoming. I've told a version of this before, so I'll keep it short, but it belongs here. My son was 7. We were in the car. It was gray and drizzly. I'd just snapped at him over rain boots of all things, and from the back seat he asked, "Mom, are you happy?" I remember the lie rising up automatically.
"Yes, baby, of course." And I remember it not coming out. I pulled over instead, and I cried, right there at the curb, and his small hand landed on my shoulder, and he said, "It's okay, Mommy. You can be sad." A 7-year-old gave me something I hadn't given myself in years, permission to be exactly as I was in that moment, without performing my way out of it first. That's the thing about enough. It's rarely a grand declaration. It's usually a small hand on your shoulder, telling you the truth you'd stopped believing. I want to tell you about a man I'll call James, though he's really a few different men I've sat with over the years, because this story repeats so often it stopped being one person's story. James built an entire identity out of being the reliable one, the one who never needed anything, the one everyone could lean on. And it worked. For a long time, it worked beautifully, right up until it didn't. Right up until he sat in my office and said, almost embarrassed, "I don't actually know what I need. I've never asked." He'd made himself useful instead of making himself known. And underneath that, like underneath so much of this, was a quiet old belief. If I'm not useful, I'm not worth keeping around.
So, quick question, and I mean this one for you, not James. If you stopped being useful tomorrow, stopped achieving, fixing, performing, holding it together for everyone else, would you still believe you deserve to be loved? Sit with that one. We'll come back to it. Here's something from the way I used to think, back when I trusted equations more than people. In physics, you don't earn the laws of motion. An object in motion doesn't have to prove itself worthy of inertia. It just has it, because it exists. I think a lot of us run our self-worth like it's a debt we owe, instead of a law we already obey. We treat love and rest and belonging like things we have to settle up for. But nobody hands you an invoice for being a person. You didn't sign anything.
The debt is invented by a parent who loved conditionally, maybe, or a culture that sells self-improvement as the price of admission to your own life, or a version of you that got hurt once and decided safety meant being smaller. Invented debts can be torn up. Not easily, not in one sitting, but they can. I don't want to pretend this is simple, because the lie that you're not enough rarely shows up wearing a sign that says lie. It shows up as a quiet, reasonable-sounding voice. It sounds like ambition. It sounds like humility. It sounds like just trying to be better. And look, wanting to grow is healthy. Wanting to be better tomorrow than you were today, that's not the problem. The problem is when growth becomes the entry fee for your own basic worth. When you can't say, "I had a good day," without immediately adding, "but I should have done more."
I had a client once tell me, with a small, tired laugh, that she felt guilty resting because rest felt unearned. I asked her, earned from who? She didn't have an answer. Most of us don't when we actually go looking. The judge issuing the verdict turns out to be empty-handed. You may have heard me mention this before. The Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold, so the cracks become part of the design instead of something hidden. I bring it up here for a specific reason, not just as a pretty image. Kintsugi doesn't pretend the bowl was never broken. It doesn't sand the cracks down until they disappear. It fills them, visibly, deliberately, with something precious, and the bowl becomes more valuable than it was before it broke, not despite the crack, but because of how the crack was honored.
That's not a metaphor about hiding your damage well. It's the opposite. It's about refusing to treat your history as the part of you that needs to be edited out before you're acceptable. The break is allowed to show. The gold is the proof that someone, you, decided it was worth the care. You don't have to wait until you're whole to be enough. You can be enough mid-repair. Most of us are, for most of our lives. So here's that question from earlier, the one about James. Let's bring it to you directly. If every achievement disappeared tomorrow, if the job title, the body, the relationship status, the version of your life you show people at parties, if all of it dropped away and what was left was just you, breathing, tired, ordinary, would that version still deserve kindness? I want you to actually answer that, not perform an answer for me. Because if some part of you said no, or hesitated, or started listing reasons you'd need to fix first, that's not a character flaw. That's just where the work is. That's the actual list, the real one,
under the fake one about weight loss and promotions. The real list only has one item on it: believing you were worth keeping before you did anything to deserve it. That woman in my office, the one with the list on her phone, I asked her to read it to me again at the end of our session, slower this time. And then I asked her, which one of these items, if you finished it tomorrow, would finally let you rest? She went quiet for a long time. Then she said, none of them. There'd just be a new one. That's the moment the list usually breaks open a little. Not because the list disappears. Old habits don't vanish in one good session, in one good conversation, in one good anything, but because she saw the treadmill for what it was for the first time in daylight.
I don't know what's on your list. I don't know which version of yourself you've decided you have to become before you're allowed to stop bracing. But I'd ask you the same question I asked her. If you finished it tomorrow, every item, perfectly, would you finally believe you were enough? Or would something new appear underneath, the way it always has? If the answer is something new would appear, I want you to hear this clearly. That's not because you're broken. That's because the list was never the real obstacle. You are already enough before you open that drawer. You're enough reading this, tired, unfinished, mid-mess, exactly where you are tonight. That's the whole conversation, really. Not a fix, just a truth I wish someone had said to me sooner, and one I'm glad to say to you now.
If this one landed somewhere real, tell me about it in the comments. I mean that. I do read them. And if you want more of these conversations, stay close, subscribe, whatever that looks like for you. I'll keep showing up here if you will. You don't have to finish the list tonight. You just have to know it was never the price of admission. You are already enough to walk through the door.